Hi, welcome to the coaching game. I'm Laurie Lawson, and tonight my guest is Marilyn Rose. Let me tell you why she's my guest. Here we sit on election night, and we are both, I said, people are going to be so crazy tonight, tomorrow, forever, for a long, long time. At least a group is, and another group isn't. I said, what can I do on election night? I said, let me call in the best transition coach I know. And that is Marilyn Rose. Well, next to me, of course. But that is, that is Marilyn Rose. And I said, Marilyn, look, are we up for this? How can we teach people how to deal with transitions? And of course, she said, sure, let's do it. So Marilyn Rose, I applaud your courageous attitude, and let's do it. Marilyn's been kicking around coaching for a while. She's also been a social worker for like 25 years in the nonprofit sector. So she's got some experience on change and making it happen, dealing with it, changing it, changing change. So I figured she's well qualified. So what we're going to do is just see how do you deal with change, because I got a feeling there's a whole bunch of change coming one way or another. What are your thoughts on this, Marilyn?
Oh, hi, Laurie. It's so great to be here. Yes, and
I
on
love that you're here.
election night, this has certainly been, you know, a time in history that I think all of us will remember, and some of the impacts, some good, some real positive for some, in that like they're drawing from within, they're stronger than they think, and then for some, just really challenging. The amount of impacts. We talk about transitions as being, events, some planned, some unplanned. So the ones that seem out of control can be so impactful. And that's what I notice in, dealing with clients, and even recognizing in my own life those transitions that are planned that can still induce fear, right? But then the ones that are out of control. So I think when working with our clients, it's understanding the degree to which like the emotion is really affecting how they're showing up, and then what can we do about it, So my thoughts today is one that really kind of describes who I've been in my own life, dealing with a lot, transitioning a lot, experiencing a lot that has been, difficult, areas that I never thought I would been, and then really problem solving. And I think that's been a part of who I've been. And in later years, in this older time of life, this kind of midlife, if you want, will, kind of transitioning from one career to the next, and also planning out life. Like, what's my life, my next chapter going to look like? I really learned a lot about judgment. So that's really where like my core thought comes when we're dealing, on election night, and the emotions of others, is how do our emotions influence our actions, our thoughts, and then what we choose to do and how we choose to show up. So those are my thoughts around judgment, emotions, and the work that we can do behind that, so that we can navigate with more purpose, with more clarity, and with more intention, even when things seem so out of control.
Well, non-judgment is an aspiration of mine that I keep trying for, and then it'll slip in every now and then. But certainly when you say control, 2020 has showed us, I believe, we don't have a control over a lot of things, it's great. And I'm not saying don't plan your future. Of course you want to do that. And of course you want to plan to pay the rent, and you want to plan to, things that are essential. But I think what it's taught us is that you got to roll with the punches. You got to dance in the moment. All kinds of those cool cliches are coming into play now. And what I found there were some blessings. There were some blessings here, even with the division. And we won't dance around it. We know there's a division between political parties right now. So even with that division, what it has done, I think there have been some detriments for sure, but I think it's brought people together. Now, if we can just become more inclusive, because we got those groups down, we know who's in our group and we know who's in the other group. If we could just figure out a way to get them together, or at least not fighting one another, I think this could be the biggest movement ever. And as coaches, I think we have to at least pretend that we believe that can happen, you know? So what do you do with a client that just resists? Well, what do you do with a client that is so stuck in their mode? How do you get them out of it? How do you get them out and ready for transition? Because I know a lot of your clients come to you and go, oh, I just, my kids just went off to college. What am I going to do? Or I'm starting a new business. But what do you do with a client that isn't ready for transition, but needs to be? Does that make sense?
Yeah. You know, I want to say, first of all, well, to the point, one of the things you said about planning. Planning is so much different than predicting. And I bring that up because
I like that.
that is where, like, fear in working with clients, there's a difference between planning and then being tied to an outcome. So that is kind of the first place I'm really working with them. My own work. So it really has started with me first, right, Laurie? And you know, when we experience a lot of judgment ourselves. So based on my life, for example, say I do whatever it takes, and this is actually true. My default has been happiness. So happiness feels good. So whatever I have to do to get there, whatever I have to eat, you know, like whoever I have to be around. Because again, my story has been one of, you know, you put away conflict, you avoid conflict at all costs. So that's kind of been the messaging. So the first work in becoming and transitioning into becoming, mastering coaching is learning how to master myself and my own emotions. So when I hate conflict, then I'm going to want to lead my client out of conflict. But what I have really learned, and I want to say have mastered in the sense of detaching, meaning the idea of moving something out of a place that might feel uncomfortable. That is the first place, is what I do, is I've learned to manage my own emotions. And when I say not judging them, they all serve a purpose. So I'm helping my clients identify that as well. So I'm not trying to get them anywhere. That is the key. That is why I love coaching so much, because it's really recognizing that all of our experiences and insights have value to moving forward. So when we can get really clear, and my clients get really clear about what is going on, we can identify those fears, what they're telling us, and almost like identifying the truth of the message. Because sometimes we really do believe something to be true. Mm-hmm. If this one gets elected, my whole business is going to fall apart. Now, right? So, and I want to say, you know, my training school, IPEC, has taught me well, you know, as far as judgment goes, the International Coaching Federation, you know, when you're hiring a coach that really values those core competencies, we're not there to judge our clients. So, which means, right, we can be coaching Republicans, we can be coaching Democrats, and extreme lenses on that spectrum. Now, a lot of times, you know, when we believe like attraction attracts like energy, sometimes it might be very similar. But I think the who I am and who I've grown to be in non-judgment, creating places of safety, that I do have people on both ends of the spectrum that actually do have a lot of similarities. So when you were talking about what can we do to bring people together, there are those core principles that we do have similarities, though we can seem so divided.
What a great point. Yeah. That is such a good point. Yeah, one that needs to be overemphasized and just repeated and repeated. Will Smith has, and I'm definitely paraphrasing, but he has a saying that the good stuff is just beyond fear. So if you can just get through that fear and examine the fear, is it real? Is it, is it perceived? Is someone telling you to be afraid?
Oh my
What's
gosh.
going on, And so you can just get through that. The good stuff is right on the other side. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. Without judging, it's like, yeah, because feelings are valid. They may, be totally not incongruent with what I am thinking, but they are valid. You have to accept that feelings are valid, right?
Yes, definitely. And to that point, to Will's point too, one of the things I was listening to someone the other day, and this I really loved. I love like working around emotions. I think it's a key to so much. And in our world and the way, kind of the constructs are set up without awareness, basically a lot of times our emotions are leading our actions. So it's like, I did this because this, or this one triggered this. But one of the things I heard around anger, which of course we've experienced so much, we've seen so much on social media, and again, righteous anger, all different types of anger, right? And anger is, what we learn is that, even without it judging, there's not a good or bad. It's being able to choose what's going to be, it's choosing, you know, who we want to be in any moment. And that's what we have more power than sometimes we think we do.
Yeah.
So one of the things I heard, and I thought it was kind of beautiful, that like anger is actually generated from love. And that was really like interesting, because the way it was described is that when anger is triggered, there is like a passion that we're actually protecting. So it can actually be about self-love and protection, which I thought was interesting. And with that being said, clients that might be really stuck in anger, or just, shame, even experiencing shame because of how they acted out, right? In
Right.
anger, like just being more reactive than responsive, right? Because anger is a real clue. What is really important to me that's being violated right now? So anger tells us something so that we can make choices in responding. But again, a lot of times we can be impulsively reactive. And that, I think, in working with clients, is helping them to choose their actions and their power in which they can really do that.
Right, respond instead of react.
Yeah.
But let's go back to IPEC training, and let
Yeah.
me tell you, Marilyn and I are both institution of professional excellence in coaching, known as IPEC, graduates. And one of the things that I always loved was button pushing. It's
Yeah.
like if you react to something and you're so angry, and you just, it's like it's not what the other person did to you. It's like, what button is it pushing in you? What is it? And I will speculate. Okay, I'll use myself as an example. Um, when I see a person without a mask, it's like I get really angry because I have had so much death in my life, and I have helped people cross over, and they have wanted to live so badly and done so many things to help that along as much as they could. And then I see this person is flaunting it. It's like, I don't need to be free. I don't need to protect myself. I don't need to protect you. And it's like, I want to punch him, but I have to go, okay, this is me. You're punching my button. And there's no point in me punching your button, because you are doing that you might be afraid. You might be afraid that someone's going to dominate your life. And that's why you're not going to wear the mask, So I think you have to look inward each time. How do you relate that to what's going on, the
Oh, yeah.
button pushing?
I mean, that was, to me too, so impactful, and it really changed my life. And it changed, immediately the life of my own kids, because my whole response started to become different. Because, so what that impacted in me was, yeah, when I was triggered, there has to be a button within me to be pushed. So I remember hearing it so specifically. There's more to learn about myself in those moments than about the person who stimulated it. And I think what I learned around that too, that principle that, you know what, Marilyn, focus my energy on the things I can control and let go of the things I can't. And Laurie, like, what really can we control? What can we control?
I think we're learning every day less and less.
Yes, so ourselves, right? Like that's what we can control. So when we're talking about transitions, helping my clients to be more in alignment to the process, to who they are in this moment, to make the best decisions with what they have right now, and to be less tied to the outcome. We cannot predict a future. And that's that difference between planning and prediction, right? So that when we learn that and we start to really judge less and show up more, then we start to see transitions as, yes, this didn't work out as planned. Okay, this is getting me closer to where I'm meant to be, so, or where I'm supposed to go. So, there is no doubt, and another tidbit I heard from IPEC, judge less, stress less. And I just want to promise out there is nothing more true than that statement. Yeah. When we judge less, and we're talking about ourselves too, even the way we speak to ourselves, when we just judge less, we're stressing less because our decisions, the way we're moving, isn't tied to something. It's not tied to good, bad, or a performance, because kindness can be a trigger to somebody based on their own story, right? So if we're trying to please the masses, which is who I was a people pleaser, I was a fixer, I was a social worker. When I wasn't able to help someone overcome a problem, it said something about me. A rough way to live life, when bureaucracy was built that, you can't, the program that will work, they can't get into. And then I made that about me, so we start living life with a lot of stress, with a lot of anxiety. But who can I be in this moment? How can I be a support to my client without having to control anything? Is pretty amazing.
Brilliant, just brilliant. What advice do you have, or what tips and tricks, whatever rocks your boat on that terminology?
Yeah.
I know advice is like, no. Let's say your party doesn't win tonight, next week, or whenever we get the results. What do we go under a rock and try and despair? What advice and tips do you have that, for people who may not get the outcome they expect?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to sound a little trivial sometimes, but somehow I feel as though when we take a look inside, how am I going to navigate this? So whatever it is that you feel an obstacle, and listen, and I'm not going to minimize what it feels like to people, because it can be really painful. It can feel like jobs. It can feel like families, values. They're really important things. Racial justice, all of these principles, they're not minimal principles. But my advice, and we don't give advice a lot, but what I would
do it anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I would really encourage taking a look in. What are your values? What is most important to you? And what are ways, that you'll be able to impact not only how you're showing up, but impact your beliefs, and then find that way to do that. And we know, Laurie, that like anger, and kind of living in frustration and despair, it can serve a purpose for a time being. It can light a fire, but it breaks us down. It's not sustainable energy. Anger is not a sustainable place to be. We start to feel it physically. So it's like, how can I utilize this anger to make a difference? What else can I manifest from this moment? Whichever way it goes, and I said, I've helped my clients on both ends do some fear setting around this, both to the opposite extremes. And it's really interesting being a part of that, right? And then fear setting, it still comes down to the individual more so than the party view. It's really interesting. Who do they want to be individually? So that's what I would say in this, tough time. We know that there's an up, we don't know which way things are going to go. There's so much uncertainty. But when we start, resilience really is about expecting uncertainty. Every moment is a transition. Every moment, we don't know what's happening in the next moment. So resilience, what it means is that, you know, who do I recognizing, taking that pause, knowing who you really are, knowing what your values are, knowing who you want to be and how you want to impact this, you know, your small immediate world and maybe the world at large, and then starting to take the steps to do that.
I love that because I so totally agree. It's you have to start with yourself. You have to, no matter whoever's president today and whoever's president tomorrow, your values are your core values. And that's going to get you through. And you have to say, oh, your values haven't changed. Your leader, I don't want to say leader. The person who's in the presidential position may or may not change, but your values. And it's like, what can I do with my core values and who the people that I want to influence in my life? What can I do under these circumstances? You know, there may be more obstacles, there may be less obstacles, but I think if you are really tuned into what it is that's so important to you right now, that's giving you that fear, that's giving you that confusion, that makes you want to fight your uncle, you know, whatever it is, then that's your true core value, and you gotta go with it. You gotta
what's being violated here, absolutely.
yeah.
You know, the other key I'd like to, you know, share, for some reason during COVID and during all of these, you know, what we're going through and these times, this term, I always love the word grace, you know, and I always love the word grace because it's also the way we view ourselves. And, you know, we can be our hardest, you know, our hardest critics, typically. And, you know, we would often talk to somebody else the way we unconsciously even speak to ourselves. So the word grace has always been an impactful word for me. But during this time, this word gracing, this idea of like, wherever you're at and how miserable you might be at what the outcome, you know, in what's going on, is really acknowledging yourself and how you feel, you know, and the pain or whatever you feel, that our emotions are our emotions. Our feelings are the way we feel. So when we acknowledge, no wonder why I'm feeling such frustration. Like, I can't believe people believe that, whatever. Just acknowledge it based on who I am, what I believe. No wonder why I feel like this. So that I wanted to add that in too.
I love it.
Yeah.
Let me tell you that gracing is a verb that Marilyn Rose made up, and I think it's so fantastic. It's like, yeah, cut yourself.
Warm blanket. It's just like really loving yourself in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's validating your feelings. Of course, you're not going to deny that you're disappointed. You're not going to deny that you're angry or that you're exhilaratingly happy. But then what are you going to do with that feeling? That, again, it all boils down to what are you going to do with all this, I'm going to say, all these blessings that are coming to you, all this information that's coming to you. It's like, okay, I'm really passionate about this. I've got to do something. The tides are against me. I don't care. I'm going to swim out there anyway. I'll take a raft, you know, however you're going to get to what is really important to you. And gracing, I think, is just, it's self-care, it's self-loving, it's giving yourself a break. It's been a rough year in so many ways, you know?
You know, and it's so interesting, Laurie. Even when I hear you say it, there's like a warmth when I'm even watching that word being said. Like, you know, it was true. I was watching somebody, like, you know, putting their arms around themselves, because how many people are alone in their apartments, you know, in their homes, you know, and there is something about taking that pause and holding and just loving yourself and nurturing yourself and like validating, you know, where you're at, not judging it. I shouldn't feel like this because, you know, I believe in God and I shouldn't have these feelings, or, you know, and really shaming ourselves for, you know, the way. And gracing is really about just loving yourself where you're at. And it's amazing what shifts inside of us when we do that, when we allow that space for ourselves. I call that gracious space, you know?
She's good with words. She's very good with words. Yeah, and I think if I don't think you can give that to others until you give it to yourself. And that's an old tenet, you know, that we all, the coaches at least, live by. You got to fill yourself up first and put your oxygen mask on first. Then you can take care of other people. And that's how I see, when you say gracing, that's what I see. It's like, Yeah, you gotta, before you can extend it to others, you gotta give it to yourself.
I just believe we'd all be making, you know, some choices that would be more impactful because, again, I do think the commonality is that people, want justice, fairness, love, happiness, and really believe at the core, though, it's just how do I even express that when I've been so violated? There's like, so that is really to heal through those things that are very, very real. And again, none of this is about minimizing those real things that happen in people's lives that make certain processes a little more difficult than it might be for some. But I do believe it's possible. I've seen it over and over again. We all have. We all know people that are so resilient that have got. We see it, And the one thing, Laurie, when we're talking about triggers, that there's something to learn about ourselves. The same is true when we see something. We call it comparing sometimes, but I actually. There's something about when we see something in somebody. Now I look at it when I'm noticed and I'm inspired by something in somebody. I have that inside of me, which is why I'm noticing it. So the same way, a trigger shows us something, there's something to learn about ourselves, so does inspiration. So at any moment in the day, we can find what's showing up. If I said in the midst of the most difficult times to anybody going through it, what is something good that happened to you today? Most people are going to be able to point their finger on something, and you're going to see something shift. And then if you ask that question, how can you bring more of that into your next moment? We have the ability to impact those around us, ourselves, and we have more choice than we like to think, even when we feel like we don't.
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. And I'll take that a little bit further. When you see something in someone that you admire, it can either be it's in yourself, or it's like, oh, I wish I had that composure, or I wish I had that knowledge, or it's either way, it's inspirational. It's something that you can go after. And
Absolutely, because we have the
instead of,
ability to. Yeah.
yeah, instead of being jealous and angry and
Yes.
resentful, just it's like, wow, okay, this is pushing my button. Do you realize we have 45 seconds left? I
No,
cannot
I
believe
can't
it.
believe that. I can't
Um,
believe it.
how can people get in touch with you? Because I think you're brilliant. I really do.
Well, thank you, Laura. I feel the same way as you too. So anyway, my website is pretty simple. Marilyn Rose Coaching. It's marilynrosecoaching.com is my website. And, I would love to speak to anybody. I mean, I offer breakthrough sessions, complimentary sessions, just really to get through something, to gain clarity. When I start working with my clients, it's about finding out who you are. So how do we know where we're going when we don't know who we are yet? So I call that first phase clarity. So my email is the same, marilynrosecoaching@gmail.com. And I'm also a mentor coach. So for coaches out there too, I can be found too on the ICF registry for mentor coaches. So
I am thrilled to be spending election night with you.
yes.
And whatever happens, I'm sure we're going to stay in touch, and because we've got a lot of.
We're going to plow through either
Yes,
way.
we are.
We're going to grow anyway. So lots of love, everyone out there, and we'll get through this together.
We will do it. We will.